With that, what kinds of support have gone well, both at the beginning and throughout your journey? Like, where have you found support? Where have you found it to be lacking?
I think, you know, in the very beginning, I I felt very alone. You know, I felt very isolated. I did sort of immediately find these support groups on Facebook. You know, there wasn't a big lag with that. However, I noticed in those early days, you know, the big ALD Facebook support group, you know, it's a mix of everything, you know, and as years have gone on now, you know, you've seen things branch off. So it's like newborn screening families or, you know, ALD for females, you know, like, but initially our choices were like this huge group. And so that meant that it you know, did the whole spread. So it's newborn screening to, you know, adults living with AMN, or you know, and it's also an international group. And it really was just the whole gamut of anything that could happen in ALD. It also is, you know, children on palliative care and, you know, sort of end of life. And you have to, I would say to people, having based on my experience, you know, you have to use these support groups and you have to take it with a grain of salt, you know, where you need to find like what works for you, what doesn't, because it can be also very overwhelming. You know, here you are looking for support, but then you're like, wow, there's so much going on here. And is it upsetting to you or is it helpful to you? You know, everybody learns differently and they receive information, you know, differently in how they cope and process. Um, but beyond that, I would say also in the early days, you know, I was hooked up initially with like another mother, you know, and we had become close for a period of time. But essentially, like my friends, I met them through Facebook, you know, and I have had, thankfully, the opportunity to meet a lot of them at conferences over the years. But, you know, you do become connected through Facebook essentially to strangers who are going through something similar as you, or may have already been through that and are trying their best to help you as well. Um, but I feel that it's lacking in the sense that, and don't get me wrong, like this parent supporting parents or family members and caregivers, it's very noble. And I would never take away from that, especially since I've developed very close relationships through that process. However, I do think it would be helpful and important to have actually more of a professional support. So, you know, even at time of diagnosis, like psych, social work, you know, is there a multidisciplinary team in place that can help support families and parents when they're getting this information? Because it's even like when you have the newborn or this life of living scan to scan to scan, you know, like there should be child life. You know, it's not just you, the adults that are processing this, but, you know, sometimes it's just a newborn, but you also have siblings sometimes. And what does that mean for them? Or even other family members. You know, some people have very large families and everybody's very involved. But I think that along the continuum, there needs to be more support in that sense. Like the psychosocial needs to be being addressed. And I know that some of the advocacy groups, sort of more as of late, because I've always sort of been on this psychosocial soapbox, but you know, I do see more and more as of late that people are trying to address these things. Like I know like one group is coming out with another guide. I know that, you know, there probably are some centers where this is available. It's just that where we went, you know, it was medicine based and sort of that's it. You know, you weren't getting that additional support. And so you just had to go back to your Facebook support and, you know, make it work that way. So that's one thing I think could be much better is you need that support all along.
I agree. I have a just little bit of a different situation only because Quentin is still asymptomatic. And so I, at the very beginning, did kind of look into Facebook, but I got a little overwhelmed because that the stories that I'm finding are not my story at all. And now he's 3.5, and I have still only met 2 moms that can even sort of relate to our situation with late onset babies. So we are pretty rare, even in the rare community. And so I had a hard time because I'm the lucky one when it comes to Krabbe, and that's a weird balance. I can't call myself lucky. My child has a terminal neurologic disorder, yet I am lucky because we have time and he's not symptomatic. And so I think the psychosocial piece would have been really beneficial at the beginning for me. I am grateful now that I am somebody that people come to because they need to talk to another mom that's late onset. I'm glad to be connected, but I didn't have that. And so that was definitely missing for me. And I was just not able to relate to the advocacy group. So I was really grateful for having somewhere to channel my energy. My husband and I started a fund. We did fundraising, and Krabbe Connect has been incredibly supportive for us, and we're really lucky that there is an organization that we could turn to that could kind of meet us when we were in the disease trajectory, which is this holding pattern where we don't know what's coming, and we are trying to act like everything's normal because, quite honestly, it is. We just don't know when it won't be, and so the psychosocial piece on the waiting end, and that's definitely missing for me.
Absolutely. You both are kind of pioneers in this, because when Kelly's sons were diagnosed, it was still fairly new. And now with Laura, it's still fairly new, like only 10 states are screening for Krabbe. And so I absolutely agree with you that there is a need for support just for those identified by newborn screening. I can completely see why like the Krabbe family support group that I'm in would be very overwhelming. I can completely see that. So